You're staring at your reflection and something feels wrong. Not your face, not your body, something deeper. The person looking back is exhausted from performing, from defending, from maintaining an image that's become too heavy to carry. The mask you've been wearing so long has fused to your skin. You can't remember where the performance ends and you begin. Every opinion you defend, every story you tell about yourself, every carefully curated version of who you are, suddenly it all feels less like protection and more like a prison you built brick by brick without realizing you were trapping yourself inside. Ego death sounds mystical, like something monks achieve on mountaintops or what happens during psychedelic trips. It's neither. It's the psychological demolition of the false self you've been maintaining since childhood, the constructed identity you mistake for reality. This isn't about becoming emotionless or spiritually superior. It's about recognizing that the voice defending you, narrating your life, comparing you to others, that's not you. It's the cage. What ego actually is, why destroying it feels like dying, and what remains when you finally let it burn. Those are the only questions that matter. The voice in your head that never shuts up, that's not thinking. That's the warden reading you your own sentence on repeat. Section 1, the identity you mistake for reality. Ego isn't confidence. It isn't self-esteem or healthy boundaries. It's the constructed self, the collection of stories, defenses, and narratives you've been performing for so long you forgot their fiction. It's the voice that never stops narrating your life, defending your choices, comparing you to others, protecting your image. Ego is the part of you that needs to be seen as good, smart, successful, valuable. It's the mask you wear in every interaction, the editor running in the background of every conversation, the constant performance of being someone acceptable, the exhausting job of maintaining this image, editing yourself before you speak, defending past decisions, protecting your reputation. That's ego at work. It feels necessary because it developed to keep you safe, accepted, belonging to the tribe. Without it, you believed you'd be rejected, abandoned, destroyed. Ego forms early, built from childhood wounds and social conditioning. Every time you were punished for authenticity, praised for performance, or taught that love was conditional, another layer of ego hardened into place. It's psychological scar tissue that calcified into identity. Every defense mechanism, every automatic reaction is ego protecting itself from perceived threat. When someone criticizes you and your stomach drops, that's ego registering danger. When you can't admit you're wrong, that's ego defending its constructed story. When you scroll through social media feeling inadequate, that's ego comparing your reality to everyone else's performance. The voice in your head commenting on everything, that's not you thinking. That's accumulated programming running on autopilot, a survival system that once protected you but now imprisons you in constant reaction, never actually present, enslaved to others' opinions and your own need to maintain the image. The cost of maintaining ego is living your entire life in the third person. You're not experiencing moments, you're narrating them, judging them, measuring them against some imagined standard. You can't enjoy a meal without photographing it. You can't have a conversation without monitoring how you're being perceived. You can't rest without guilt because productivity is how ego proves worth. The difference between awareness and ego is simple. Awareness is the part that watches everything quietly, the consciousness behind your eyes that notices thoughts and feelings without being them. Ego is the part that performs, protects, and pretends. Awareness just is. Ego constantly does. You've been living as ego for so long that you've forgotten awareness exists. The watcher has been drowned out by the performer. You are not the voice. You are what hears the voice. That distinction is where freedom begins. The moment you recognize ego isn't you, the question becomes unavoidable. What happens if you let it die? Section 2, the terror of letting go. Destroying ego feels like dying because you've confused ego with your existence. When the constructed self starts dissolving, your nervous system genuinely believes you're in danger. This isn't metaphor. Your brain can't distinguish between ego death and literal death. The same fear circuits activate, the same survival panic floods your body. Heart racing, breath shallow, existential terror. It's called death not poetically but experientially. The person you thought you were actually disappears. Every story you told about yourself, your achievements, your wounds, your personality, your role, begins falling away, and what's underneath feels like nothing. That nothing terrifies you more than any external threat, because if you're not the story, then who are you? The void that appears when you stop defending yourself feels like annihilation, because you've never experienced yourself without the narrative running. Ego dissolution gets triggered by different catalysts: major loss, death, divorce, career collapse, betrayal that shatters your self-image, failure so complete it breaks the story you've been telling, spiritual practice that quiets the mind enough to see through the illusion, psychedelics that chemically interrupt ego's dominance, or simply getting exhausted by your own bullshit, the accumulated weight of performing finally becoming unbearable. Whatever the trigger, what follows is the dark night, the period where old identity is gone but new clarity hasn't arrived. Pure disorientation. You don't know who you are, what you want, what anything means. Most people abort the process here. They panic and immediately start reconstructing new ego, spiritual ego, victim ego, enlightened ego. Anything to stop the terrifying experience of being no one. The resistance patterns are predictable, clinging to old stories, even after they've been revealed as false, creating drama to feel something, seeking validation to prove you still exist. The temptation to rebuild is overwhelming because humans aren't designed to live without identity. Socially, psychologically, we're wired for narrative. Your mind will offer you new stories. I'm someone who's been through ego death now. That's just ego wearing different clothes. The real terror is staying in the void long enough to discover what's on the other side. Most people would rather suffer with familiar ego than risk the unknown of egolessness. Even therapy often reinforces ego instead of dissolving it, helping you build a better story rather than questioning whether you need one. The dark beauty of this process is that it cannot be controlled. You can't schedule ego death. You can't manage it. You can only stop resisting it. When ego realizes it's being deleted, it fights like a cornered animal. Panic attacks, depression, rage, numbness. These aren't signs you're doing it wrong. They're signs ego is losing its grip. The question isn't whether it feels like death. The question is whether you'll let yourself die anyway. What remains after the funeral is not nothing. It's everything you were before you learned to perform. Section 3. What remains? When ego dies, you don't disappear. The performance ends. What remains is simple presence awareness without constant commentary. You still have thoughts, but you're not enslaved to them. You still have preferences, but you're not defined by them. You still engage with life, but you're not fighting it anymore. The strange peace of no longer defending yourself, proving yourself, or needing to be right settles in like silence after years of noise. Decisions get clearer because you're not filtering everything through. How does this make me look? Relationships get more honest because you're not performing for approval. Energy stops leaking into image maintenance. You can finally hear what's actually happening instead of what you're narrating about what's happening. This isn't emptiness, it's spaciousness, room to breathe, room to respond rather than react. People who've gone through ego death seem different. They don't posture, they don't need to win conversations. Criticism doesn't hook them because there's nothing defending itself. Failure doesn't define them because they're not their accomplishments. They care deeply about things without needing to control outcomes. This isn't detachment, it's engagement without attachment. They're more effective, not less, because they're not fighting themselves anymore. The voice that used to narrate everything still appears, but now it's recognized as weather passing through rather than truth being spoken. You can engage fully with life, love people, build things, have opinions, without making any of it about proving you exist. The capacity to act without self-reference is freedom most people never taste. You're no longer asking, what does this mean about me? In every situation, you're just here, responding to what's needed, moving through life like water instead of like stone. Ego will try to rebuild. That's guaranteed. The work becomes catching it early and letting it go again. Signs ego is dissolving. Opinions feel less important. Criticism doesn't destroy you. Failure doesn't define you. Success doesn't inflate you. You notice the performance starting, and you can choose not to continue it. The art of living without constant self-reference means engaging with life directly instead of through the filter of, how does this affect my story? You're not trying to be humble. That's just another performance. You're simply here without the exhausting job of being someone. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you fluid. Ego death isn't a one-time event. It's a practice of continuous letting go, watching the false self try to reassemble, and choosing presence over performance each time. The relief waiting on the other side of resistance is this: you finally get to rest. No more defending, no more proving. Just existing, aware, alive, free from the story that was always fiction anyway. The person you've been performing isn't who you are. It's the cage you built around who you are. Destroying it feels like dying, because you've never known yourself without it. What remains isn't nothing. It's awareness, presence, the part of you that's been watching this whole time while ego performed and narrated and defended. The voice in your head will keep talking. The difference is you finally know you're not the voice, you're what hears it. That distinction changes everything. Stop defending the story. Let the mask fall. What's underneath isn't terrifying emptiness. It's the freedom you've been pretending to have while ego kept you imprisoned in the exhausting performance of being someone.